I think that we're in what you could call a post-Zionist era. And I'm not afraid of that. Because we have to now define our goals anew, define them going forward. And I'll tell you why I think that is and where we're going. I think we're in a transition phase right now. We're in a transition phase to something very, very great, something very, very new. And we have to not be afraid to make that transition. Does anyone have like tarot cards? Anyone know what tarot cards are? One of the cards of the tarot cards is what's called death. What is death? Like everyone's afraid to get that tarot card because it's death and it's got a skull and it's scary. But what it really means is change. A lot of times when we're changing, when we're in transition, there's a form of death in that because what we used to be is no longer, and now we're going to be something new. Or a better metaphor is that we were like a caterpillar in a cocoon, and the time has come like to be something new. Right now, there's all these changes that are taking place in our people. Like I feel it. Anyone who senses very deeply can feel that. We're like at the verge of something new, but we don't know what it is yet. We're at the verge of getting to somewhere else. We're not sure where it is. The cells are coming to one to another, and one day the cocoon is going to burst open, and we're going to have a beautiful butterfly. Now, what is that butterfly? I think, in my opinion, is a transition from what we've been calling Zionism to what we've been calling, for lack of a better term, Hebrew Universalism. A unique vision for the world that's rooted in our unique tradition, our authentic tradition. That's a message not only for us, but it's a message like you guys talked about humanist Zionism. You guys talked about Malchut Yisrael, but you talked about the idea of that within our sources we have to have a way how to deal with the other. What is a moral way to deal with the other and to have a Jewish state? That's a question. What is the Jewish message to the world? And I want to leave you guys with just one thought. I want you to I think that if you think about it, you'll see how accurate and true it is. Is that, the world, when the State of Israel was established in 1948, the United Nations was willing to give like a stamp of approval. Why did they give a stamp of approval? Because it felt bad. Like after the Holocaust, the Jews, got destroyed. We might as well give them like this little sliver of a refugee state on the coast, like around Tel Aviv, and not even Jaffa, but Tel Aviv and Haifa and places like that. We can give them a little refugee state, and we feel bad for them, but we'll hug them. Kind of like the way that Yaakov Avinu, when he came out of the exile, right? When he came out of exile in Aram, he came and the first thing he met before he went into the land of Israel, who was it that he met? Who? Esav, the angel of Esav. And he battled with the angel of Esav. Esav, in our tradition, represents like the Western world, right? He battles with Esav, and when he finishes the battle, what happens in that battle when he fights the angel of Esav? What happens to Yaakov? He comes out?
Yisrael.
He comes out Yisrael, but also what does he come out? Is he able to walk away safely? What is he? He's limping. And he's limping, and when Yaakov comes into the land of Israel and he meets Esav for real, what happens? They hug, and Esav gives him a hug and a kiss, right? In other words, and what does it say? What does Rashi say there? Nichmuru achamav. That Esav felt bad for Yaakov. Esav felt bad for Yaakov. He was limping. He was coming into the land, and he kissed him. And when you see the word kiss in the Torah, it has like little dots on it, right? And then they say, well, it wasn't really a real kiss. It was just a temporary kiss. That was what happened in 1948, guys. The Jewish people was limping. We were coming back to the land of Israel. We were limping from the Holocaust. And the Western world said, okay, we'll give you a kiss. You can have your refugee state within the borders of the United Nations Partition Plan, which was 1947 Partition Plan, and so forth. And that was okay. But what happened in 1967, I want you guys to understand, and this is very important. I'll try to make it quick. What happened in 1967 that Ezra Yachin talked about today was something that rocked the foundations of the Western world. Because this wasn't any longer a refugee people that were giving them a little space to live in. All of a sudden, in 1967, guys, we had a biblical scale event in the heart of the 20th century. Little David destroys all the armies around him in a number of days, comes back to Judea, comes back to Samaria, comes back to Hebron, to Yericho, to the Golan Heights, to the Sinai, to Yerushalayim, to the Temple Mount, against all odds. And now all of a sudden the Western world has to ask itself a question. The Western world, which is the inheritor of the Christian world, in the Christian world, the Jews were considered to be what? The pariah. They rejected Jesus, and so they're not in the stage of history anymore. They're on the side of history. What happened in 1967 was that the Jewish people came back onto the stage of world history the way that the Jewish people had been telling ourselves that it was going to happen for 2,000 years. I'm not speaking from a religious perspective. What I'm speaking from right now is a sociological perspective, a psychological perspective, the collective subconscious of the Western world. Because no matter where you grew up in the Western world, you've heard of the Jews. Whether you met them or not. They're part of your mythology. Like if I say Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Why do you know the Seven Dwarfs? Because it's part of like stories you tell yourselves all the time. And the same thing with the Jewish people. There's a story that the Western world, through Christianity, even through secularism, which is Western secularism is a rejection of Christianity, but they've heard these stories. What's the story? That they have the Bible, like you go anywhere, in any hotel in Louisiana, you open up the shelf, what does it have there? The Bible. What does it say there in the prophets? It says, one day the Jewish people are going to come back from exile and come back to Jerusalem and reestablish their sovereignty. And that story is connected to something else very important. I want you to listen. I really will try to make this quick. The return of the Jewish people is what's called like the Messianic dream, is connected to a change in all of the world. You guys know what I'm saying? Like Yeshayahu, the prophet, Lo yisagoy goy cherev. There will be no more wars. There's a universal message that comes out from Yerushalayim. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah u'dvar Hashem Yerushalayim. What is that? From Jerusalem, we say it every day. There's going to be a word, some message that's going to come out of Jerusalem. Some message is going to come out of Jerusalem to who? Not to the Jewish people. To who? To the nations of the world. And all the nations of the world that are the inheritors of the West, they have this story in their head. The Jewish people, when they come back, this is connected to a change in all of world history. It's not a religious idea. I'm just telling you the myth. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Jews come back from exile to Jerusalem. What's the next step? A message is supposed to come out to the world from Yerushalayim. A unique Hebrew message is supposed to come out to the world from Yerushalayim. So what happened? I want to tell you. I want you to think about this for a moment. Over Shabbat, think about it. But in 1967, we had this miraculous victory, a biblical event in the heart of the 20th century, and that question starts to get raised in the minds of people. When we succeeded in 1967, the world did not say anything. They did not condemn us. They did not start BDS movements. They did not have demonstrations in the streets against the Jewish state. They were in favor, like, whoa, something amazing has happened here. The Jewish people have come back. I bet they have something really, really, really important to say to us. And the whole world looked back and waited to hear what the Jewish people had to say. And what did the Jewish people say? Absolutely nothing. We had no unique message to say. We were too scared to say it, or we didn't know what it was. And the world says, wait a second. Aren't you supposed to have like a special message? Aren't you supposed to have a special message to the world? A universal message for all of humanity, all of mankind? Something different, something that we haven't thought of, something that we need? You know what? You're not who you say you are. You're imposters. Get out. Why'd you make this whole mess in the Middle East? Get out. I think, to a certain extent, if we look at the collective subconscious of the West, that's at least a part of what's happening here. There's a tremendous expectation of the Jewish people, and we have not lived up to the ideal and given that message. When I think about the next step of the Jewish people, our next step is to change that unrequited love, right, to a real love and to develop. Do we have something unique to say to the world? Do we have a unique universal message for all of mankind? I believe that we do. And I believe that the part of it is having the courage not to be just like a little subordinate entity to the West, to have something like to stand on our own feet and say, we have something unique that we want to give to the world. And I think that a lot of you in your groups were touching upon those ideas. We have to do that at a national level. We have to have that discussion. That discussion has to take place, and together we should be able to formulate that message. So I think that's the goal, that's the vision of the next step. And I'll just end with this, is that when we're talking about messianism, like you guys brought up the word messianism, I want you to just to understand one thing. For a lot of people, the word messianism is a very dangerous and scary word because it's like something mystical, something supernatural, right? But I think that the real definition of messianism is that the belief that there are all the elements in the world today to make the world into a better place. Not some mystical event, but there's all the elements in the world today to make the world into a better place, and I think the Jewish people always believe that. I think we do believe that. In that sense, for example, Christianity is not messianic. Why not? Because they believe that the world can't be saved. Only from supernatural energy or something can save the world. And in that sense, communism, for example, is messianic, even though I don't ascribe to all of its beliefs, but it is messianic in the sense that it believes that there are all the elements in the world to make the world into a better place. What we have to do is we have to be able to describe and define for ourselves, and that's what we're trying to do with the team, to break out into all these different places. What is our vision for the world? What is our message to humanity? And that, from my perspective at least, is the next step for humanity. The next step for you guys right now is to go outside and have a pizza. Shabbat shalom.